What the hell just happened in Indiana? Caitlin Clark got clawed in the face, shoved to the floor, and blindsided, all in one game. The refs? Silent. The league? Watching. And when nobody stood up, Clark did it herself. With a step-back three and a fire that turned the arena into a war zone, she lit up the Connecticut Sun and dragged the Fever to the Cup final. This wasn't basketball. This was personal. And the message was clear. You can try to break her, but she'll bury you with a smile. Let's unpack the madness.
There's nothing there. There's nothing there. Nothing there. Jacy Sheldon claws her in the eye. Then the two of them get into it, and then Mabry just goes and shoves her onto the ground. Eject both of them. Eject both of them. Eject both of them. Jacy Sheldon scratched.
What was supposed to be just another mid-season game turned into a flashpoint moment for the entire WNBA. Jacy Sheldon clawing Caitlin Clark in the eye wasn't just a dirty foul. It was a full-on statement, and not in a good way. The kind of move that should have drawn an immediate ejection and suspension. But instead, what we saw was inaction, chaos, and a bubbling frustration that finally boiled over. You watch this frame by frame, and there's no basketball move in sight. Clark is dribbling with her left hand. Sheldon swipes at her right eye, nowhere near the ball. Then, before Clark can even react, Mabry comes flying in and body checks her from behind. In any other professional league, that's 2 ejections, maybe 3. But here, nothing. No flagrant 2. No game misconduct. Just a shrug and a play on. It's not just about the physical contact, it's about the precedent. If this had happened to any other star player, would the reaction have been the same? The league has a Caitlin Clark problem, and not the good kind. She's drawing ratings, filling arenas, lifting franchises, and in return, she's getting scratched, shoved, and blindsided with no protection. You don't let the face of your league get assaulted on national TV without consequences. The silence spoke louder than the whistle.
And Caitlin Clark got into it a bit. They got into it a bit in the second quarter. Like, nothing too bad, it was just kind of chippy. Then Jacy Sheldon claws Caitlin Clark in the eye. By the way, Caitlin's dribbling the ball with her left hand. Caitlin's dribbling the ball here, and Jacy Sheldon comes in from the right shoulder and claws her in the right eye. Like, yay much away from the ball. This much away from the ball. The ball's here, Jacy Sheldon claws her here, this far away. And then, after she gets clawed in the eye, she's trying to walk away. Tina Charles gets her in the back, and then as she's trying to walk away...
At this point, it's not even a missed call. It's a systemic failure. Caitlin Clark didn't just take a hard foul. She got jumped, scratched, checked, blindsided. 3 different defenders got physical, aggressive hits on her, one after another, and still, no one got tossed. Not a flagrant, not a tech, not even a review that led to real accountability. What are we doing here? Sheldon gouged her. Charles hit her while she was walking away, and Mabry delivered a shoulder while Clark wasn't even looking. It was a mugging in 3 parts. And somehow, she's the one that ends up with a technical? This wasn't physical basketball. This was targeted intimidation, a blueprint for how to take the league's most marketable player out of rhythm, both physically and mentally. And let's be clear, Clark felt it. She looked shook. But what happened next? That's the part that made this game unforgettable. It wasn't just the hits, it was the response. This moment lit a fire in her. She could have folded. She could have played scared. Instead, she locked in. And over the next quarter, she turned that frustration into fury and gave the Suns a basketball lesson they won't forget. The league didn't protect her, so she did what scorers do. She punished them the only way she knows how, on the scoreboard.
She goes and hits Jacy Sheldon with the step back 3 in her face, and then goes demon mode, screaming at Jacy Sheldon.
There's revenge, and then there's what Caitlin Clark did here. With the game still tense, bruises still fresh, and adrenaline still rushing, Clark walked straight into a one-on-one with the very player who gouged her, and hit one of the most cold-blooded shots of the WNBA season. Step back, splash, stare down. And then, she didn't hold back. She let Sheldon hear it. She screamed in her face. She channeled every ounce of frustration from that play, from this season, from the headlines, and turned it into a moment that will live in every fan's memory. This wasn't just a bucket, it was justice, street justice. Players like Clark are usually taught to stay composed. But here's the truth. The league didn't have her back. The refs didn't step in. The flagrant went unpunished. So she fought back the only way she could, by turning the court into her courtroom and delivering a verdict from 28 feet. This moment was bigger than basketball. It was emotional, it was personal, and it marked the turning point of the game. From that shot on, the Suns were done. Clark didn't just steal the momentum, she took their soul. That was the exact moment she flipped the switch and dragged her team, her fans, and her critics into demon mode with her.
Back 3, the game's over. They want to get her off the floor. So what Caitlin Clark does is she starts hyping up the entire crowd. She doesn't even go in for the timeout. She does a lap of the court and starts hyping.
This is where superstars separate from stars. Most players, after getting physically targeted and emotionally drained, would have taken that timeout to breathe, to cool down, to hide in the huddle. But Caitlin Clark? She walked in the opposite direction. With her adrenaline surging and the crowd roaring, she turned to the fans. Not the bench, not the coaches, the people. She took a lap. Yes, a literal lap around the court, slapping hands, shouting, rallying the crowd into a frenzy. And in that moment, she made one thing very clear. She wasn't just back. She was in control. This wasn't showboating. This was leadership. The Fever were feeding off her energy. Indiana had just watched their best player get targeted and disrespected. Instead of responding with fear, they responded with fire. Because Clark lit the match. Moments like these are why arenas sell out when she's in town. Why the league bends around her orbit. She's not just a shooter, she's a show. And more importantly, she's a spark that turns pain into power. In a league begging for identity, Clark continues to offer one. Bold, emotional, unfiltered grit. She made that court hers, not by scoring, not by talking, but by standing tall when most would have folded and inviting the crowd to stand with her. That's star power. And it shook the Suns to their core.
Sophie Cunningham got her, and I mean this when I say this. This would have been a flagrant 2, except for the fact that they allowed Marina Mabrey did what she did. This possibly should be a flagrant 2. She got her around the neck. And then Jacy Sheldon gets up, and Sophie immediately goes at Jacy Sheldon, grabs her. Like, I'm okay with this being a flagrant 2, by the way. I'm actually okay with that. I'm okay with that.
The Fever have tried to play nice. They've tried to keep the high road. But every high road has an endpoint, and Sophie Cunningham found it. Enough was enough. Cunningham didn't act like an enforcer. She acted like a teammate. Because when no one else was going to step in and protect Caitlin Clark, she did. The moment Sheldon popped back up, Sophie was right there. Chest to chest, arms ready, justice served. It wasn't about setting a dirty precedent. It was about correcting one. Cunningham's retaliation wasn't random. It was a calculated response to a system failing one of its stars. When referees refuse to protect players, the players start protecting each other. And Sophie? She didn't flinch. You can say it was a flagrant. You can argue suspension. But what you can't argue is the message it sent. To the refs, to the Suns, to the entire league. You don't get to keep going after Caitlin Clark like this. In a league built on competition, this was survival. It's not ideal, it's not pretty, but it was real. Every great team has someone who's willing to get tossed for the bigger picture. That night, it was Sophie. And while it may not have been pretty basketball, it was necessary, and the Fever knew it. She didn't hesitate. She didn't apologize. She just stood up for her teammate, the way no one else had.
When they allow that stuff to happen, and it's been happening all season long. All season long. It's not just this game, it's been happening all season long. This is what happens, right? This is what happens. You've got competitive women who are the best in the world at what they do, right? And when you allow them to play physical, and you allow these things to happen, they're going to compete. And they're going to have their teammates' backs.
While most coaches give vague post-game comments and move on, Fever head coach Stephanie White pulled no punches. In fact, she delivered one of the most honest and damning quotes we've heard from a WNBA bench boss all season. And she was right. White didn't just defend Clark. She indicted the league's officiating, its inaction, and the dangerous environment it allowed to fester. From the first quarter, she said, they knew it was going to boil over. And guess what? It did. Because the refs refused to set a standard. This wasn't a coach deflecting. It was a coach calling it, and exposing it for everyone to hear. When players are allowed to go unchecked, when officials lose control early, games spiral. And if the referees aren't going to do their jobs, The players will take matters into their own hands. That's what happened, and White didn't sugarcoat it. But what made her comments even more powerful was how she framed it, not as a tantrum, but as a truth. The league is filled with elite athletes playing at the highest level, and when there's no line drawn, they'll fight for their teammates themselves. White didn't whine. She led. She shielded her players. She pulled the pressure off Clark, and she spoke the words everyone else was afraid to say. In that press conference, Stephanie White didn't just coach a team. She defended a movement.
She goes and hits Jacy Sheldon with the step back three in her face, and then goes demon mode, screaming at Jacy Sheldon.
There's a fine line between being provoked and responding with power, and Caitlin Clark didn't just step over that line, she lit it on fire. After being clawed in the face, shoved in the back, and blindsided from behind, Clark had every right to be furious. But rather than combusting into chaos or retreating into a shell, she channeled it. And how did she respond? With a step-back three in Jacy Sheldon's face that sucked the oxygen out of the arena. It wasn't just a bucket, it was a message, a thunderclap, a declaration. You wanted smoke? I'm the fire. What followed was even more telling. Clark didn't walk away. She screamed. She let it out. She looked Sheldon right in the eyes and let her know, you can't stop me. And for every kid watching, every fan furious about how she was treated, this was the revenge they didn't know they needed. This was not about stat padding. This was about reclaiming her space. We've seen Clark hit logo threes, but this one carried weight. It didn't just swing momentum, it sealed the Sun's fate. After this moment, the Fever never looked back. The basketball gods love a good story, and Caitlin Clark, on that possession, wrote one of her best chapters yet. Not because it was a highlight, but because it was justice.
It's hyping up the crowd, and then a little bit later in the game, right at the end, Sophie Cunningham sees her chance for revenge, takes down Jacy Sheldon.
We have to talk about what happened after the step-back three. It wasn't just revenge, it was revolution. Clark didn't stroll back to the bench. She took over the arena. No timeout huddle, no pat on the back. Instead, she sprinted past teammates, waving to the crowd, slapping hands, screaming. And the arena? It turned electric. She weaponized the crowd. You could feel it through the screen. That moment when a building turns from watching to believing. Clark orchestrated it. Like a conductor whipping an orchestra into chaos, she built the storm herself. This was not a home game. This was a home warpath. And every fan in that building became part of it. Make no mistake, the Fever didn't just pull away on the scoreboard. They crushed Connecticut's spirit. That noise wasn't white noise. It was fuel for Indiana, and a dagger to the Sun's confidence. It's rare in sports when one player controls the energy of the building after a brawl, after being targeted, after being tripled. But Clark did. She spun the trauma into triumph. She didn't hide. She leaned into the madness and made it hers. That's what stars do. That's what legends start with.
The Indiana Fever are in the Commissioner's Cup final right now, which is a big thing. And I'll talk about some of the stuff.
Lost in the chaos, in the ejections, in the claw marks, and the controversy was the scoreboard. And on that scoreboard, one simple truth. Caitlin Clark took Indiana to the final. While the discourse explodes around fouls and officiating, the WNBA quietly witnessed its next big moment. Indiana, a team that was dismissed, doubted, and physically dismantled, is now in the championship round of the Commissioner's Cup. How? Clark, through fire. Despite the dirty plays, Clark finished with 26 points, 6 assists, and a plus 31 plus-minus. She was blitzed full court, clawed mid-dribble, and jawed at every trip down the floor. And she still orchestrated a win so complete, it left the Suns rattled and the Fever elevated. And here's the kicker. She did it without stat chasing. She did it by managing the game, controlling the tempo, moving defenders like chess pieces. The type of basketball IQ that doesn't trend on social, but wins games. This wasn't revenge with chaos. It was revenge with precision. The storylines will rage, the claw, the hit, the Cunningham retaliation. But in the history books, they'll remember the result. Caitlin Clark led the Fever to the final. That's the part the critics can't erase. That's the part the league must celebrate. Because when the dust settles and the bruises fade, Clark isn't just the face of controversy. She's the face of victory. So where does this leave us? Caitlin Clark didn't just survive this game, she owned it. After being clawed in the eye, shoved mid-walk, and bulldozed from behind, she delivered one of the most composed, explosive, and emotional performances we've seen all season. 26 points, plus 31 impact, revenge threes, crowd eruptions, and most importantly, a ticket to the Commissioner's Cup final. This game will be remembered for the chaos, for the ejections, for what the refs didn't do. But it should be remembered for what Clark did with all of it. She transformed disrespect into dominance. But here's the real question. How long can this go on? Because it's not just about one bad foul or one missed call. It's about a disturbing pattern. Clark has become a punching bag for the league's worst tendencies: physical cheap shots, inconsistent officiating, and a reluctance to protect the league's most valuable asset. And yet, she keeps showing up. She keeps hooping. And she keeps winning. The Fever are in the final. Clark is still standing. But this isn't just a sports story anymore. It's a warning shot. Either the league protects its stars, or it risks losing the very audience it's trying to build. So now we turn it to you. Was this revenge? Was this enough? Or are we still waiting for the WNBA to wake up? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this one's going to echo. And don't forget, when the lights are brightest and the elbows are flying, Caitlin Clark doesn't flinch. She fires back.